Dear students, in this class we are going to learn about the psycholinguistics theories. There are so many theories based on psycholinguistics. From that, we are discussing about Skinner's theory of behaviorism, Piaget's cognitivism, Lev Vygotsky's social constructivism, and Noam Chomsky's universal grammar. What do you mean by psycholinguistics?
Psycholinguistics is the study of the mental aspects of language and speech. It is primarily concerned with the way in which language is represented and processed in the brain. It is the branch of both linguistics and psychology. Alan Garnham described psycholinguistics in his book named Psycholinguistics Central Topic as psycholinguistics is the study of the mental mechanisms that make it possible for people to use language. It is a scientific discipline whose goal is a coherent theory of the way in which language is produced and understood. That means psycholinguistics theories explains the mental processes that occurs in human brain during a person produce and perceives a language.
Next, we are going to discuss about Skinner's theory of behaviorism.
B.F. Skinner was a leading American psychologist, Harvard professor and proponent of the behaviorist theory of learning, in which learning is a process of conditioning in an environment of stimulus, reward and punishment. An important process in human behavior is attributed to reward and punishment. Behaviorism, also known as behavioral psychology, is a theory of learning based on the idea that all behaviors are acquired through conditioning. Conditioning occurs through interaction with the environment. Behaviorists believe that our responses to environmental stimuli shape our actions. Behaviorism or the behavioral learning theory is a popular concept that focuses on how students learn. Behaviorism focuses on the idea that all behaviors are learned through interaction with the environment in the future. For example, students work hard and study for their test in order to get the reward. The behaviorist perspective is concerned with how environmental factors called stimuli affect observable behavior, that's called as response. The behaviorist perspective proposes two main processes whereby people learn from their environment, namely classical conditioning and operant conditioning. That means behaviorists believe in how we behave or respond to the stimulus. An example of behaviorism is when teachers reward their class or certain students with a party or special treat at the end of the week for a good behavior throughout the week. The same concept used with punishments. The teacher can take away certain privileges if the student misbehaves. Those stimulus are responsible for the behavior of the students. Next, we are discussing about the terms imitation, repetition and reinforcement in Skinner's theory of behaviorism. The imitative learning is a type of social learning whereby new behaviors are acquired via imitation. Imitation aids in communication, social interaction and the ability to modulate one's emotions to account for the emotions of others, and is essential for healthy sensory motor development and social functioning. Imitation is a crucial aspect of skill development because it allows us to learn new things quickly and efficiently by watching those around us. Most children learn and imitate everything from gross motor movements to speech to interactive play skills by watching parents, caregivers, siblings and peers perform these behaviors. Next, we are looking how repetition is important in behaviorism. For behaviorists, repetition is very important. John Watson, the father of behaviorism, suggested that the more frequent a stimulus and response occurs in association with each other, the stronger the habit will become. The fact that repeated presentation of information or items typically lead to better memory for the material. The repetition effect is a general principle of learning, although there are exceptions and modifiers. For instance, spaced repetitions are usually more effective than masked repetitions. Next, we are looking at how reinforcement is related to behaviorism. In behavioral psychology, reinforcement is a consequence applied that will strengthen an organism's future behavior whenever that behavior is preceded by a specific antecedent stimulus. Positive reinforcement is the application of a positive reinforcer. In operant conditioning, positive reinforcement involves the addition of a reinforcing stimulus following a behavior that make it more likely that the behavior will occur again in the future. When a favorable outcome, event, or reward occurs after an action, that particular response or behavior will be strengthened. Thinking and reacting is developed through reinforcement and repetition. Reinforcement encourages the repetition of a behavior or response each time the stimulus that provoked the behavior recurs. The behavior becomes more automatic with each repetition. Language is acquired through operant conditioning, otherwise known as reinforcement and imitation. His theory was essentially that children learn to speak by copying the words and sounds heard around them and by having their responses strengthened by the repetitions, corrections and other reactions that adults provide.
The next theory we are discussing about Piaget's cognitivism.
The main term we can see in cognitivism is schema. A schema or scheme is an abstract concept proposed by Jean Piaget to refer to our abstract concepts. Schemas are units of understanding that can be hierarchically categorized as well as webbed into complex relationships with one another. In Piaget's theory, a schema is both the category of knowledge as well as the process of acquiring that knowledge. He believed that people are constantly adapting to the environment as they take in new information and learn new things. Schema theory is a branch of cognitive science concerned with how the brain structures knowledge. A schema is an organized unit of knowledge for a subject or event. It is based on past experience and is assessed to guide current understanding or action. In linguistics, cognitive psychologists and psycholinguistics, cognitive psychologists and psycholinguistics have used the concept of schema to understand the interaction of key factors affecting the comprehension process. Simply put, schema theory states that all knowledge is organized into units, and so it goes with the development of a schema. Schemas are higher level cognitive units that are acquired through slow learning. Schemas are semantic memory structure that help people organize new information they encounter. In addition, they may help a person reconstruct bits and pieces of memories that have been forgotten. As experiences happen and new information is presented, new schemas are developed and old schemas are changed or modified. For example, think of a horse. A young child may first develop a schema of a horse. She knows that a horse is large, has hair, 4 legs and a tail. When the little girl encounters a cow for the first time, she might initially call it a horse. After all, it fits in with her schema of the characteristics of a horse. It is a large animal that has hair, 4 legs and a tail. Once she told that this is a different animal called a cow, she will modify her existing schema for a horse and create a new schema for a cow. Next, we are going to the changes happening to a schema. The processes through which schemas are adjusted or changed are known as assimilation and accommodation. In assimilation, new information is incorporated into pre-existing schemas. In accommodation, existing schemas might be altered or new schemas might be formed as a person learns new information and has new experiences. How schemas affect learning? Schemas influence what we pay attention to. People are more likely to pay attention to things that fit in with their current schemas. Schemas also impact how quickly people learn. People also learn information more readily when it fits in with the existing schemas. Schemas help simplify the world. Schemas can often make it easier for people to learn about the world around them. New information could be classified and categorized by comparing new experiences to existing schemas. Schemas allow us to think quickly, even under conditions when things are rapidly changing. Our new information is coming in quickly. People do not usually have to spend a great deal of time interpreting it. Because of the existing schemas, people are able to assimilate this new information quickly and automatically. Schemas can also change how we interpret incoming information. When learning new information that does not fit with existing schemas, people sometimes distort or alter the new information to make it fit with what they already know. Schemas can also be remarkably difficult to change. People often cling to their existing schemas even in the face of contradictory information. Schemas tend to be easier to change during childhood but can become increasingly rigid and difficult to modify as people grow older. In many cases, people will only begin to slowly change their schemas with a continual barrage of evidence pointing to the need to modify it.
Next, we are going to discuss about Lev Vygotsky's social constructivism.
In this theory, we are discussing the main topics ZPD, scaffolding and mental processes during social constructivism. The concept zone of proximal development was developed by Soviet psychologist and social constructivist Lev Vygotsky. Scaffolding or supportive activities provided by the educator or more competent peer to support the student as he or she is led through the ZPD, that means zone of proximal development. That means individuals are active participants in the creation of their own knowledge. Social constructivism is the theory that says learners construct knowledge rather than just passively take in information. As people experiences the world and reflect upon those experiences, they build their own representations and incorporate new information into their pre-existing knowledge. Social constructivist Vygotsky suggested that every function in the child's cultural development appears twice, first on the social level and later on the individual level. First between people and then inside the child. What is the zone of proximal development? The zone of proximal development refers to the difference between what a learner can do without help and what he or she can achieve with guidance and encouragement from a skilled partner. Students are most receptive to instruction within their ZPD because it represents the next logical step in their ongoing skill development. Scaffolding refers to the support given to the learner who is attempting to learn something new in the zone of proximal development. That support might include tools, hand-on activities, or direct instruction. When the student first begins to learn the new concept, the teacher will offer a great deal of support. Over time, the support is gradually tapered off until the learner has fully mastered the new skill or activity. Just as a scaffold is removed from a building when construction is complete, the teacher's support is removed once the skill or concept has been learned. An example of scaffolding could be seen in a mathematics classroom. When introducing a new type of problem, the teacher would write the problem on the board and solve it themselves, explaining each steps in the process aloud. The teacher would also ask the students questions and give positive feedback on all answers, whether they are correct or incorrect. The teacher would repeat this process a few times and then give the students problems to work on themselves. The teacher would then fade away and allow the student to work independently and only offer assistance if requested from the student. By scaffolding, the teacher is building a support system of initial knowledge before allowing the student to stand alone and work by themselves. From the support or scaffolding given by the teacher, the students can move from the actual developmental level to the potential developmental level. The space or distance between these two levels is known as zone of proximal development. Social constructivism is based on specific assumptions about reality, knowledge, and learning. Social constructivism stresses the need for collaborative learning. Learning is promoted through collaboration among students and between students and teachers. Some examples of collaborative learning activities are group problem solving, group inquiry, simulations, and debates.
The last theory we are discussing about Noam Chomsky's universal grammar.
Universal grammar is a theoretical concept proposed by Noam Chomsky that the human brain contains an innate mental grammar that helps humans acquire language. Children of the same speech community reliably learn the same grammar. According to Chomsky's theory, the basic structure of language are already encoded in the human brain at birth. This universal grammar theory suggests that every language has some of the same laws. For example, every language has a way to ask a question or make something negative. According to Chomsky, the goal in teaching is to help cultivate growth and to help the students become interested in learning. He states that students typically they come in interested and the process of education is a way of driving that defect out of their minds. The major principles of universal grammar includes language universal, that means human languages share certain properties. Second one, convergence. Children are exposed to different input yet converge on the same grammar. Third one, poverty of the stimulus. That means children acquire knowledge for which there is no evidence in the input. The LAD, language acquisition device, is a hypothetical tool hardwired into the brain that helps children rapidly learn and understand language. Chomsky developed the LAD in the 1950s and since then has moved on to a greater theory called universal grammar to account for the rapid language development in humans. The LAD, language acquisition device, is a hypothetical tool hardware in the brain that helps children rapidly learn and understand language. Chomsky developed the LAD in the 1950s and since then has moved on to a greater theory called universal grammar to account for the rapid language development in humans. The LAD concept is a perpetual instinctive mental capacity which enables an infant to acquire and produce language. The language acquisition device explains how children, when exposed to any human language, are able to learn it with only a few words following birth. The term universal grammar has been used to describe the knowledge contained in the language acquisition device.
In this class, we discussed about Skinner's theory of behaviorism, Piaget's cognitivism, Lev Vygotsky's social constructivism, and Noam Chomsky's universal grammar. I think you all got an idea about these theories of psycholinguistics. Thank you.